It's not unusual when you find those you regard as outsiders in Nigeria's politics trying their, not luck this time around, trying to have a say in the affairs of this country. Sometimes you find musicians, business people, and this time around, tonight, we'll be talking to one person who done very well for himself in the area of music, and now he wants to be in the National Assembly. What are his reasons, and what has been the experience? I'm being joined by Bankole Wellington, popularly called Banky-W. He joins us live in our Lagos studio. He's running on the platform of the People's Democratic Party for the Federal House of Representatives in Lagos. Thank you so much, Banky-W. It's good to see you.
Thank you, Sheil. I'm so glad to be on your program. Thanks for having me on the show.
Great. Let's begin. I know this is not your usual terrain. This is not your usual turf. How's it been for you?
So far, so good. The journey has been very much a baptism of fire, but a very positive, very inspiring journey. For people that know, I contested in 2019. Back then, it was very much an independent move. It was myself and a friend of mine, BK. We put together the Modern Democratic Party at that time. And I think that was, you know, for me, what I say is that in 2019, we planted the seed. But in 2023, by God's grace, we'll win the seat. So it's not my first go-round. And I've learned some very, very interesting lessons that have given me a bit more wisdom, which we're applying now as we contest this time. So I feel very, very optimistic and positive that we're going to win this time, by God's grace.
4 years appears to be a long time. Since then, you've been a husband, you've been a father, you've opened new businesses, and now coupled with your renewed ambition to want to run for the Federal House of Representatives. Now,
yes, sir.
Give me an understanding why you want to be a federal lawmaker.
So it's really quite simple. For as long as I've been relevant in entertainment, that's in the music business, in the movie business, for as long as I've been a businessman and entrepreneur in Nigeria, for as long as God has blessed me, I've always been very vocal about our country, about the need for good governance, about the need for young people to participate in politics. In all humility, I say that I've probably participated in more peaceful protests than just about anybody that I know. The most recent being NSARS, but going back the last 12, 14, 15 years, Bring Back Our Girls, Occupy Nigeria, Light Up Nigeria, Enough is Enough, the Register, Select, Vote, Protect movement. So I've always been extremely vocal. But the truth is that the goal of activism and advocacy is change. It's improvement, it's impact. So until we've started to see the kind of change that we seek, then it means our activism has not yet been completely successful. And for me, it dawned on me some time ago that we needed to start moving from protest to power. We needed to start putting like minds at the table of government, right-thinking people, people who come from that outside advocate perspective, come from that private sector business experience, people who know what the country is going through because they've gone through the same things, people who've had to build companies and provide jobs and be a stepping stone for young people. And people from that side of things needed to come into our government because at the end of the day, you cannot hijack a plane unless you're inside. So we have to get into the system to fix it from within. And that's really what inspired me some years ago to start kind of changing my focus to say, you know what, with the education I have, with the audience I have, with the background I've been given, with the experiences I have as an entrepreneur, a businessman, a servant of the community, with all of those things lined up, if I can't be one of the people to stick my neck out and, you know, make the sacrifice to try and get into our government, then who am I waiting for to do that? I strongly believe that the problems in Nigeria are from the top down, but a lot of the solutions are from the bottom up. So we need to start focusing on different levels, getting people into government at different levels, and being the change that we want to see from within. And that's what informed my journey into politics.
It's an interesting journey, actually. So you look at that journey, and one area that is also very prominent was the role you played in the NSARS campaign. Right. Would you say that played out well? Did it go according to plan? And what exactly was the, did you guys set out to achieve with that?
So, you know, I think the NSAS campaign, I think it depends on how you look at it. I think that on the one hand, there are people who felt very disappointed by the way it all came to a crashing end. There were people who, you know, really wanted us to go a lot further than we did. However, I think that big wheels, even though they do turn slow, they still do turn. And anybody who is looking at this as some sort of sprint to the finish line has it mistaken, because this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And I think the NSAS protest, the peaceful protests, were a very positive step in the right direction in just bringing the awareness of the country to a certain place, in bringing government to the table, in letting young people feel like they had a voice in our in the national conversation about something that was plaguing young people, something that was really harming the plight of young people in the country. Now, obviously, we would have liked to see it go a lot further, but I do think that it was a positive, at least as far as the peaceful protest side of things is concerned. I think it definitely was a positive, but like I said, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. Anybody that was expecting Nigeria to be excellent overnight and everything, you know, will just be perfect going forward doesn't know how these things work. So with that being said, I think while it was a positive, I'll go back to my first point about saying we have to move from protest to power, because you can't protest forever, right? The truth is, no kind of protest is sustainable permanently. And while we do have to continue to peacefully speak up and speak truth to power, some of us have to cross the divide to get into the system to try and fix it from within. And I think that's what informed my own foray into politics. That's why I'm still here. And we're trying to build a bridge into mainstream politics for other people to do the same thing.
But Banky,
yes,
I mean, should you win this election, would you be doing anything in terms of policy drive to push such ideas in the National Assembly? Should you be a federal lawmaker? And if that is the case, what would that be?
Well, absolutely. I think the entire purpose of me going into politics, into the National Assembly, is to be that voice for reform. I believe very strongly that the way that we get out of the mess that we're in as a nation is through innovation and reform. Now, innovation doesn't really happen inside of government offices. Innovation happens in the private sector. It happens in fintech, in media, in entertainment, in agriculture, in banking, in telecoms. That's where innovation happens. If you take the 7 unicorns that are on the African continent, Nigeria has 5. So you know that as a people, we chase innovation pretty well, but we need reform. And reform can only happen when you put reform-minded people at the table of policy making, at the table of government, to say, what can we do differently about the things that we've always done to try and put this nation on the path towards growth and development? So we need people who are reform-minded. So for instance, in our educational sector, you know, there's the Universal Basic Education Act, the UBE Act. Can we reform that a bit to say, instead of it being a counterpart-funded program, can we make it a program for results, so that states that are fiscally struggling, that cannot meet up with their counterpart of the funding, maybe they can, if it's a program for results, it can be performance incentivized. So your enrollment, your teacher-student ratio, your pass ratio of your students. So we're incentivizing the performance of our educational sector to allow states that are struggling to unlock that funding. NYSC is another example in our educational sector. I don't know that there's anybody that would disagree that NYSC today probably does not achieve everything that it was originally designed for. So how do we reform it? Don't cancel it, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, but how can we reform it? Can we say maybe instead of it being a mandatory program, let's excise it from the Constitution and make it optional? And then if that's the case, the people who don't need it will go. Now the people who are remaining, you can pay them more. So instead of paying them 30,000 naira a month, which does nothing for a young person in today's Nigeria, you can pay them 60 or 70 or 80K. And then the sunk cost of the campsites and the buildings and the places where the NYSC camp holds, instead of sticking with this march past at 4 a.m., which most young people probably allegedly bribe their way out of, how do we turn that into skill acquisition centers? How do we turn it into technology hubs? How do we turn it into places where they can gain leadership skills or soft skills? So it's that reform-minded approach.
I see that you have your plate very full with some of the ideas you are hoping to push. But,
yes, sir.
But I mean, to really narrow down, what would be your personal and main objective as a lawmaker, if elected, that you're taking to the National Assembly? What would that be? One thing that is your agenda, that is pushing you, that is driving you to go into the National Assembly?
All right, you know, you can't give politicians a microphone. We'll talk plenty, so I'm going to tell you two. First of all, everybody can go to my website, Banky2023.com, to check out the legislative agenda. But if I had to narrow it down, I would say taking this reform approach to our educational system and to our healthcare. Because at the end of the day, I've done a lot of charity work, a lot of community service things. We've done the Lekki Food Bank. We've provided food for over 150,000 people in Lagos State. And while I'm grateful for that level of impact, a food bank is not a sustainable solution. It doesn't solve everything. It's a temporary stopgap measure. Young people don't want to live off of giveaways, off of handouts, off of food distribution. Young people just want to be given the tools to fend for themselves and to find a way out for themselves. I'm a living testimony that when given an opportunity, a young person can rise from nothing to something. I've seen it happen in my life. I've seen it happen in so many of the people that I've worked with. So it's taking that approach to politics. But how do we do that? How do we democratize opportunities for our young people? They have to be healthy, so we have to take a look at our primary healthcare centers and make sure they're up to speed. In Etiosa, there's no general hospital as we speak, as of today. So they have to be healthy, and then their education has to be addressed. How do we make technology, access to technology, available for our young people so that they can begin to fend for themselves either as employees who have the skill set to be hired in today's world, or as employers and entrepreneurs themselves. So it would be that approach. We call my manifesto the 7 E's for Etiosa. It's available on my website, Banky2023.com. So I'm happy to invite everybody that's watching to check it out.
Let's touch on a few other issues quickly before we go. You've talked about a few ideas in terms of policy that you would like to work on should you be elected.
Yeah.
Now, the reality is this. You have to win this election before you can even get these ideas pushed forward.
Absolutely.
You're running against someone who is planning to, not only him, but you are running against, there is an incumbent in that seat, in the APC, Babajide Obanikoro, who is also popularly called Igbo. In your area, it means one thing, that is also very popular in your area. And now, this is not your first time of perhaps being beaten in that respect. Now, what do you see in this election? Are you afraid of the opposition you're up against?
Absolutely not. I think that, first of all, the choices for Etiosa are clear. For everybody who is coming to the polls, the choices are between things remaining the same or trying something different. Trying something different, and I think that's where we have an advantage. I think people are tired of, you know, representation that doesn't really represent the people, that doesn't necessarily have the best interests of the people at heart. And I think that that's what we bring to the table. I think the people of Etiosa are very much standing with us. They're very much believers in what we're trying to do. We've spent a lot of time in the community over the past few years just doing the work, hearing, listening to the people, trying to figure out where the pain is, what the problems are, and how we can use the powers of this office to address that. I think that what we represent is the chance for Etiosa to finally have transparent, accountable, empathetic representation. And I think that's what we bring to the table. So I'm very, very confident.
I'm going to ask you another political question.
I'm not afraid at all. I'm very confident.
And this question perhaps in the respect that, look, the candidate of the APC, presidential candidate of the APC, is from Lagos State.
Yes.
And there will be that natural tendency of the people of the state to say, this is our own. That is an assumption. And the choice of your party, the PDP, how popular is your party in Lagos State considering the past election and what has become a very well-known internal issues in your party? Does this give you some kind of doubt about your chances going into the election, especially when you have a presidential candidate of the APC who has his domain as Lagos?
Right. So I think for me, I don't see it so much as a problem, because I think, if anything, the people of Lagos are very enlightened. They're very progressive. They're very enlightened. There's a very knowledgeable population in Lagos, not just, you know, at the highest levels of business, but even amongst the young people. I mean, in Etiosa, that's where NSARS happened. So I think if young people there were happy with the status quo, then you wouldn't have seen any of that. But you're seeing a level of awareness and engagement in Lagos and all around Nigeria today that shows you that our young people have never been this energized about our political process. And I think that that bodes well for candidates like me. You mentioned the fact that there are some issues, but honestly, there is really no political party anywhere in the world where you will not find issues. There's no organization of people where you will not find issues, because human beings inherently we're imperfect people. And you know, when you come to something like politics where there are various interests, you will have clashes of egos and clashes of interests.
So,
but I'm confident.
Let's go now.
Sorry,
we're totally
I'm confident. Let me just land on this. I'm confident that as the People's Democratic Party, we will put it together by the finish line and we'll be successful in this election.
All right. Just help me. Just have 20 seconds for you to answer this. And this is my final question to you. Quickly, this game is about win or lose. Should you lose this election, would you give it a try? And what would you be telling those who are probably thinking that they might be leaving those other forays and coming to politics? Would you advising them that this is something that they could do also in 30 seconds? Banky.
Okay, in 20 seconds. By the grace of God and with the support of the people of Etiosa, we will not lose this election. We are going to win this election. However, if my service to the community was only dependent on whether or not I got a seat in government, then I don't deserve a seat in the first place. And so I will always be a son and a servant of Etiosa. I will always be one of the people that speaks up for the best interests of my people and for the country at large. And I will always be somebody that tries to open the door a little wider and build a bigger bridge for more people to come in and do the same. This is about getting like minds, right-thinking people into various levels of government. That's what I truly believe. That's what I will always stand for, whether it has anything to do with me or not. But I will win this election by God's grace and with the support of the people. Thank you so much.
All right. You might have sung your way into the hearts of many Nigerians, but definitely, Banky-W, you probably will have to talk your way into the hearts of the people of Etiosa to get their vote. Thank you so much indeed, Olubankole Wellington, Banky-W, a member and a candidate of the PDP in Etiosa for the federal constituency election. Thank you indeed for coming on tonight.
Thank you so much, Sheung. God bless.